Long before the grand cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro emerged along the mighty Indus, human communities were quietly mastering the art of survival and adaptation in the fertile river plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Around 3300 BCE, in the low-lying alluvial plains nourished by the Indus River and its tributaries, small agrarian villages began to flourish. Among the earliest known of these settlements was Mehrgarh, situated in present-day Balochistan, which archaeologists consider the cradle of early South Asian urban development. Here, life was simple, but beneath this simplicity lay the seeds of a civilization that would one day astonish the world with its planning, organization, and technological ingenuity. At Mehrgarh, humans were shifting decisively from a nomadic, hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one defined by agriculture and animal husbandry. Archaeological evidence shows that residents cultivated wheat, barley, peas, and possibly cotton, establishing some of the earliest known farming practices in South Asia. Cattle, goats, and sheep were domesticated not only for food but for hides, milk, and labor. This intimate interaction with the environment marked a turning point. Humans were no longer merely passive occupants of the land. They were beginning to shape it according to their needs. The material culture of these early settlements was modest but revealing. Excavations at Mehrgarh and other pre-Harappan sites uncovered handmade pottery, some decorated with simple geometric designs, and small stone and bone tools for agriculture and daily life. The appearance of beads made from semi-precious stones such as carnelian, turquoise, and lapis lazuli points to the earliest forms of craft specialization. These items, painstakingly created, hint at a society that valued skill, beauty, and utility in equal measure. They also suggest that even in these early days, trade networks were taking shape, carrying raw materials across vast distances, and laying the foundation for the expansive commercial networks of the later urban civilization. But these communities were not just farmers and artisans. Archaeologists have found evidence of early social structures and rituals. Terracotta figurines, often interpreted as fertility symbols or proto-mother goddesses, were widespread. These artifacts reveal that even in this pre-urban phase, spiritual or ritualistic life held significance. Burial practices further illuminate social complexity. Some graves contain tools, ornaments, and animal remains, indicating that early residents recognized hierarchical or symbolic distinctions within their communities. It is plausible that even without palaces or kings, these settlements maintained rudimentary systems of leadership or communal organization. The environment itself played a critical role in shaping early settlement patterns. The Indus Plains, with their annual floods, fertile soils, and access to fresh water, offered opportunities for stable, sedentary life. Yet these same rivers posed threats. Evidence suggests that early communities learned to anticipate seasonal changes, manage water resources, and adapt to the variability of river flows. This environmental awareness would later inform the sophisticated urban planning of Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Dholavira, where drainage, wells, and water storage were engineered with remarkable precision. From a broader perspective, the period between 3300 and 2800 BCE saw the gradual coalescence of a cultural identity that would define the Indus civilization. While each village maintained local practices, there was a remarkable uniformity in pottery styles, beadwork, and tool-making techniques across sites separated by hundreds of kilometers. This indicates communication, exchange, and shared knowledge, a proto-cultural network that anticipated the later urban civilization. Linguistically and culturally, however, much remains unknown, as no deciphered writing system existed in this phase. What we can see, though, is a society capable of innovation, adaptation, and collaboration, qualities that would enable it to evolve into one of the ancient world's most enigmatic civilizations. Trade. Even at this early stage, played a pivotal role. The presence of non-local materials, such as lapis lazuli from Afghanistan or marine shells from the Arabian Sea, demonstrates that pre-Harappan communities were not isolated. They were active participants in a network of exchange spanning considerable distances. These interactions facilitated not only the movement of goods, but also the dissemination of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, creating a fertile environment for the emergence of the complex urban centers that would later define the mature Harappan phase. Technologically, this era witnessed important innovations. Stone tools became more sophisticated, with grinding, polishing, and shaping techniques reflecting a growing understanding of material properties. Pottery kilns improved firing methods, producing vessels that were durable and suited for storage, cooking, and transport. The advent of early textiles, suggested by impressions on pottery and recovered spindle whorls, points to weaving as an emerging craft. These advancements, while modest compared to later urban achievements, laid the groundwork for a civilization that would one day create standardized weights, multi-story houses, and an undeciphered script. Socially, the dynamics of these communities likely revolved around kinship, communal cooperation, and shared responsibilities. Agricultural productivity allowed certain members of the society to specialize in crafts, trade, or ritual functions. The emergence of such specialization implies the early development of societal roles and perhaps rudimentary forms of governance. This nascent organization demonstrates that even before the rise of cities, humans in the Indus Valley were experimenting with the structures necessary for complex civilization. Religious and symbolic life in these early settlements is another window into human imagination and societal priorities. Figurines, often depicting women, animals, or hybrid forms, suggest a preoccupation with fertility, prosperity, and protection. While no temples or monumental religious structures have been found from this phase, the widespread nature of these artifacts indicates shared beliefs and rituals. Fire pits, ceremonial hearths, and carefully arranged burials further support the notion that early inhabitants were developing spiritual frameworks that would influence the cultural life of the later urban centers. Education, in the sense of knowledge transfer, may have been informal but crucial. Techniques for farming, animal husbandry, pottery, and beadwork were likely taught within families or small communities, ensuring continuity of skills across generations. Oral traditions, storytelling, and symbolic practices could have helped transmit values, myths, and practical knowledge, forming the cultural scaffolding for the future urban civilization. By 2800 BCE, these pre-urban communities had achieved remarkable stability and coherence. Settlements were growing larger and more organized, agriculture was increasingly reliable, and trade networks were expanding. Craft specialization became more sophisticated, and shared cultural practices were evident across distant villages. This period set the stage for the proto-urban transformation, a threshold moment where the basic elements of agriculture, craft, trade, social organization, and ritual would converge to give rise to the first true cities of the Indus Valley. The story of these early settlements is also a story of human ingenuity in the face of environmental challenges. Seasonal floods, unpredictable river courses, and variable rainfall demanded adaptation and innovation. People built rudimentary embankments, stored surplus grain, and developed techniques to conserve water, all of which would evolve into the advanced water management systems of the mature Harappan cities. Their intimate knowledge of the land allowed them to harness its resources sustainably, ensuring that these communities could not only survive, but also lay the foundations for expansion and complexity. The period from 3300 to 2800 BCE represents the true dawn of the Indus Valley Civilization. It was a time when human communities began mastering agriculture, domesticating animals, crafting tools and ornaments, and forming early social and ritual structures. Settlements like Mehrgarh exemplify the ingenuity, adaptability, and foresight of these early peoples. Though modest in scale, these communities created a cultural and technological framework that would, over the next millennium, evolve into the grand urban centers that astonish archaeologists and historians to this day. The dawn of settlements is therefore not merely the prelude to the Indus Valley Civilization. It is its essential heartbeat. It tells a story of experimentation, persistence, and creativity. It reminds us that even the greatest cities, the most impressive technologies, and the most complex trade networks all begin. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Kot Diji, Raymondari, and Nashiro provides a window into this critical period. These settlements were larger than their pre-Harappan predecessors, often covering several hectares, and show early signs of planned layouts. Unlike the scattered huts and loosely arranged homes of earlier villages, houses in these proto-urban centers were sometimes arranged along rudimentary streets or pathways, suggesting the initial recognition of urban spatial organization. While still modest compared to the grid-like sophistication of later cities, these layouts demonstrate that the concept of communal planning was taking hold, a revolutionary step for human settlements of the era. During this period, craft specialization became increasingly pronounced. Artisans began producing standardized pottery and beads on a larger scale, employing techniques that allowed for uniformity in size, shape, and design. Pottery, often wheel-made, displayed geometric motifs and patterns, signaling both aesthetic sophistication and practical utility for storage, cooking, and trade. Beadmaking, a craft already seen in earlier settlements, evolved into a highly organized activity. Beads made from carnelian, agate, and semi-precious stones were now polished and drilled with precision, sometimes strung together in intricate necklaces or used as markers of social status. The emergence of specialized craft zones within settlements suggests that certain families or groups dedicated themselves entirely to these occupations, freeing others to focus on agriculture, trade, or ritual life. Trade itself began to expand in scope and complexity during the proto-urban phase. Non-local materials, including lapis lazuli from Badakhshan, turquoise from northern Afghanistan, marine shells from the Arabian Sea, and semi-precious stones from Rajasthan, appear at multiple sites, indicating that long-distance exchange networks were already in operation. This exchange was not merely material but cultural. Pottery styles, figurine motifs, and tool designs were remarkably consistent across distant settlements, demonstrating a shared cultural framework and communication among communities hundreds of kilometers apart. Early systems of standardized weights and measures appear to have been in use, laying the groundwork for the highly regulated trade practices that would define the mature Harappan economy. Religion and ritual life also evolved significantly in this phase. Figurines, often interpreted as fertility symbols or deities, became more widespread and stylistically consistent. Some of these terracotta figures depict women with prominent features, possibly representing a reverence for fertility or mother goddess cults. Animal figurines, including bulls, elephants, and humped cattle, reflect the importance of livestock in daily life and may have held symbolic or ritual significance. Burial practices became more formalized. Graves often contained tools, ornaments, and food offerings, hinting at beliefs in an afterlife or the spiritual significance of certain goods. These ritualized behaviors demonstrate that early inhabitants were not only concerned with survival, but also with creating meaning, order, and social cohesion within their communities. The proto-urban period also saw significant agricultural advances. Farming techniques improved, with irrigation channels and small embankments likely used to manage seasonal floods and enhance crop yields. Wheat and barley remained staple crops, while cotton and other textiles may have begun to emerge as local industries. Domesticated animals continued to play a central role, supplying not only meat and milk but also hides, dung for fuel, and labor for plowing fields. These innovations allowed settlements to grow in both population and territorial reach, supporting a denser, more complex social structure. By this time, evidence suggests that social stratification was beginning to develop, albeit in nascent forms. The uniformity of housing in some areas contrasts with larger or more elaborately constructed dwellings in others, implying that wealth or social status differences were emerging. Burial practices further indicate social differentiation, with some graves containing higher quality goods and more elaborate arrangements than others. While these distinctions were subtle compared to the monumental hierarchies of contemporary Mesopotamia or Egypt, they point to the early organization of society along lines of labor specialization, wealth, and perhaps communal authority. Another hallmark of the proto-urban phase was the increasing use of seals and symbolic markings. Small steatite seals, often engraved with animal motifs such as bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures, appear at multiple sites. While the script remains undeciphered, these seals likely served administrative, commercial, or ritual purposes. They may have functioned as identifiers of property, tokens for trade, or markers of identity within increasingly complex communities. Their presence indicates that even before the rise of the fully urban civilization, inhabitants of the Indus region were experimenting with abstract systems of communication and organization. Water management, a feature that would later define cities like Mohenjo-Daro, also has its early roots in this period. Archaeological evidence points to small wells, rudimentary drainage channels, and the strategic placement of settlements near reliable water sources. These innovations not only sustained agricultural productivity, but also facilitated the growth of larger, denser populations. The inhabitants of the proto-urban settlements were learning to manipulate their environment systematically, balancing human needs with the challenges posed by seasonal floods, shifting rivers, and fluctuating rainfall. Trade networks expanded beyond immediate neighbors during this phase, creating a proto-economy that linked distant settlements. Raw materials were transported hundreds of kilometers, suggesting a level of logistical coordination unprecedented for communities of this scale. Early trade routes likely relied on riverine transport along the Indus and its tributaries, while overland paths connected interior villages. This movement of goods and ideas facilitated cultural homogeneity, ensuring that innovations in craft, urban planning, and ritual practice spread rapidly across the region. Standardized weights and measures further indicate that communities recognized the need for regulated trade, a precursor to the sophisticated commercial systems of the mature Harappan civilization. Art and symbolic expression also flourished. Pottery, figurines, and early seal designs reflect a society increasingly conscious of aesthetics and meaning. Geometric patterns and animal motifs dominate the artistic record, suggesting both practical symbolism and cultural identity. Figurines, often associated with fertility or spiritual life, may have played roles in domestic rituals or communal ceremonies. Such artifacts indicate a population striving not only to survive, but to create social cohesion, ritual significance, and a shared sense of identity across the growing network of settlements. By the end of this proto-urban phase, around 2600 BCE, the foundations for the mature Harappan civilization were firmly in place. Settlements were larger, better organized, and interconnected through trade and cultural exchange. Craft specialization, standardized production, symbolic communication, and rudimentary social hierarchies were all established. Agricultural productivity and environmental management enabled sustained population growth, supporting the transition from village clusters to the sprawling urban centers that would define the Indus Valley Civilization at its peak. The proto-urban period represents more than just incremental progress. It is the bridge between the modest agrarian communities of Mehrgarh and the complex cities of the mature Harappan phase. It is a period of experimentation, adaptation, and innovation that demonstrates the ingenuity of early South Asian societies. These centuries show how humans can transform simple settlements into organized, interconnected communities capable of supporting trade, specialization, and culture on a scale never before seen in the region. In examining this period, one cannot ignore the human element, the creativity, resilience, and foresight of these early inhabitants. They faced environmental uncertainty, navigated the challenges of communal life, and laid the foundations for administrative and ritual systems that would endure for centuries. By studying the proto-urban settlements of the Indus Valley, we gain insight into the very nature of civilization itself, the ability to coordinate, innovate, and create meaning within the fragile constraints of human society. The era between 2800 and 2600 BC thus stands as a testament to the vision and adaptability of the first Indus communities. They were not yet urban giants, but they were thinkers, planners, and innovators. Their achievements in agriculture, craft, trade, and social organization set the stage for the monumental cities of Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, and beyond. This period, often overlooked in popular narratives, is the crucible in which the elements of one of the ancient world's most remarkable civilizations were forged. By 2600 BCE, the Indus Valley had entered a transformative era. The modest villages and proto-urban settlements of the preceding centuries gave way to the first fully realized cities, a hallmark of what archaeology. The defining feature of these early cities was planned urban layouts. Unlike previous settlements, streets were arranged in grid patterns, aligned along cardinal directions, and divided into sectors for residential, commercial, and public use. Houses were constructed from sun-dried and baked bricks, often multi-storied, with flat roofs and courtyards. The standardization of brick size across hundreds of kilometers indicates an advanced system of urban regulation and shared knowledge among builders. This uniformity suggests the presence of civic planning authorities or governing bodies that ensured cohesion and functionality across the rapidly expanding urban landscape. Central to these cities was infrastructure, particularly water management and sanitation. Mohenjo-Daro, for example, featured a sophisticated drainage system with covered channels running along major streets, connecting individual homes to larger conduits. Wells were abundant, providing fresh water to households, while public baths, such as the famed Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, reflect both practical and ritual use of water. These innovations were not mere conveniences. They were essential for sustaining dense urban populations and indicate an understanding of hygiene, public health, and resource management far ahead of their time. Trade networks expanded dramatically during this period, connecting cities both within the Indus Basin and beyond. Artifacts from Mesopotamia, including carnelian beads, etched seals, and other luxury goods, attest to long-distance exchange between South Asia and the civilizations of the Near East. Locally, craft specialization flourished. Copper, bronze, and gold tools were produced in urban workshops, while pottery, beads, and ornaments were manufactured in standardized, high-quality forms. The urban economy was complex. Markets facilitated the movement of agricultural surplus, artisanal goods, and imported materials, reflecting both sophistication and coordination in trade practices. The use of seals and symbols became central to the administration and commerce of these cities. Small steatite seals, often engraved with animals such as elephants, unicorns, and humped bulls, bear inscriptions in the still-undeciphered Indus script. Though the meaning of these symbols remains elusive, they likely served as identifiers for merchants, markers of ownership, or administrative tools in trade and governance. Their widespread presence across cities suggests a shared bureaucratic and commercial culture, a remarkable achievement in communication and societal cohesion without the aid of a fully understood written language. Residential life within these cities was marked by both uniformity and subtle differentiation. Houses were arranged in blocks along streets, with narrow lanes separating individual dwellings. Many contained private courtyards and bathing areas, while larger homes may have accommodated extended families or functioned as semi-public spaces. Artifacts recovered from these homes, including pottery, cooking utensils, and personal ornaments, provide a window into daily life. The evidence suggests a population that valued cleanliness, domestic order, and comfort, alongside civic responsibility, as indicated by the meticulous planning of urban infrastructure. Religious and ritual practices, while subtle, are evident in the material record. Terracotta figurines, often depicting women or fertility symbols, continued from the proto-urban phase, suggesting continuity in spiritual and symbolic life. Animal motifs, including bulls and elephants, appear frequently in seals and figurines, likely serving both religious and social purposes. Certain public spaces may have functioned as ceremonial centers, though no monumental temples have been discovered. This emphasis on shared ritual and symbolism underscores the social cohesion required for urban life to function smoothly. Population estimates for these early cities suggest that tens of thousands of inhabitants lived within their walls. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro each covered approximately 100 to 200 hectares, with dense clusters of dwellings, workshops, and public spaces. The ability to sustain such populations required innovations in agriculture, storage, and food distribution. Granaries have been uncovered at both Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, reflecting centralized storage and possibly controlled distribution of grain, an early form of economic governance that ensured urban stability. Metallurgy and craft production reached new heights. Bronze tools and weapons were manufactured with precision, copper was cast into standardized implements, and gold ornaments were produced for trade and display. Pottery techniques improved, with wheel-thrown vessels decorated with intricate motifs. Bead-making, a hallmark of Indus craft, reached unprecedented sophistication. Carnelian beads were heat-treated, drilled with precision, and polished to uniform perfection. These crafts were not only utilitarian but also markers of social identity and cultural expression, reflecting the interconnectedness of economy, art, and society. Agricultural surplus remained the backbone of urban life. The surrounding fertile plains supported wheat, barley, and pulses, while domesticated animals contributed both labor and food. Irrigation techniques, likely refined from earlier proto-urban experimentation, allowed communities to buffer against seasonal variability. This productive base enabled urban populations to focus on specialized crafts, trade, and administration, fueling a positive feedback loop of growth, innovation, and social complexity. During this period, the Indus civilization also exhibited remarkable cultural uniformity across vast distances. From Harappa in the Punjab to Lothal in Gujarat, architectural styles, brick dimensions, pottery designs, and seal motifs display a striking consistency. This suggests an overarching cultural identity and shared systems of knowledge, even in the absence of a centralized state. While we may never know the precise mechanisms of governance, the evidence points to coordination through shared practices, trade regulation, and possibly councils or guilds that oversaw urban administration. Education and knowledge transfer, though informal, were critical to sustaining urban life. Skills in metallurgy, bead-making, pottery, and masonry had to be taught systematically within families or workshops. Craft standards, measurement systems, and urban planning knowledge were transmitted across generations, ensuring that the complex social and technological systems of the cities remained operational. Oral traditions, symbolic artifacts, and ritual practices likely played a role in conveying both practical and cultural knowledge, fostering social cohesion and continuity. By 2500 BCE, the rise of urban civilization along the Indus had transformed the landscape irreversibly. Cities were now centers of economic, cultural, and social life, interconnected through trade, standardized practices, and shared belief systems. This was not a sudden transformation, but the culmination of centuries of experimentation, adaptation, and gradual accumulation of knowledge from the pre-Harappan and proto-urban periods. The mature Harappan phase represented the peak of this early human ingenuity, a civilization capable of supporting dense populations, sophisticated craft production, extensive trade networks, and civic infrastructure without centralized monarchy or monumental palaces. Environmental awareness remained a defining feature of these cities. Urban planners placed settlements to optimize access to water while mitigating flood risks. Drainage systems, wells, and bathhouses reflect an understanding of sanitation and public health that would not be matched in many other parts of the ancient world for centuries. Agricultural hinterlands were managed carefully to support urban populations, and craft production relied on sustainable sourcing of raw materials, demonstrating an early integration of economy, environment, and society. The rise of urban civilization in the Indus Valley also underscores the interplay between innovation and social organization. Houses, streets, workshops, and public structures were all products of coordinated effort and shared knowledge. Trade networks extended the reach of these communities, bringing in materials, ideas, and cultural influences that reinforced the coherence and resilience of urban life. Social, religious, and symbolic practices provided cohesion, while economic and technological advances ensured survival and growth. Together, these elements forged a civilization that would dominate South Asia for centuries to come. In this era, the Indus Valley Civilization distinguished itself not merely through its material achievements, but through its ability to balance complexity with adaptability. Cities were large, organized, and interconnected, yet they functioned without the overt displays of hierarchy seen in contemporary Mesopotamia or Egypt. Governance, trade, ritual, and daily life were intertwined in subtle but effective ways, reflecting a civilization capable of sustaining urban life. Water management and sanitation were defining features of these cities. Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath, measuring approximately 12 by 7 meters, served as both a communal and ritual space, lined with bricks and sealed with bitumen to ensure water retention. Extensive drainage networks carried wastewater from individual houses to covered street drains, while wells provided consistent access to fresh water. These systems demonstrate a level of public health awareness and civic planning that was exceptional for the ancient world, highlighting the civilization's commitment to maintaining orderly urban life. Trade and economic activity flourished during this period. The Indus people engaged in extensive long-distance trade, exchanging goods with Mesopotamia, Oman, the Persian Gulf, and possibly beyond. Artifacts such as carnelian beads, etched seals, and standardized weights indicate a highly organized commercial network. Lothal, located on the Gujarat coast, functioned as a major maritime hub, with evidence of dockyards, warehouses, and facilities for shipbuilding and trade. Inland cities like Dholavira, situated in arid regions, utilized sophisticated water reservoirs and storage systems, ensuring that urban populations could thrive despite challenging environmental conditions. These cities were not isolated. They were nodes in a vast network that linked urban centers, rural hinterlands, and distant trading partners. Craft specialization reached unprecedented levels. Bronze, copper, and gold were transformed into tools, ornaments, and ceremonial items through skilled metallurgy. Beadmaking, a hallmark of Indus craftsmanship, produced thousands of finely polished carnelian, steatite, and agate beads, often drilled with precision for use in jewelry, trade, and ritual contexts. Pottery was wheel-made, decorated with geometric patterns, animal motifs, or symbolic designs, while seals were engraved with animal imagery in the undeciphered Indus script. These seals, found in nearly every major urban center, suggest an organized system of communication and commerce that spanned the civilization, even without a deciphered writing system. The social structure of the mature Indus civilization is still a subject of debate, but material evidence points to a society organized around craft, trade, and communal coordination rather than rigid hierarchies. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, there are no monumental palaces or royal tombs, and public spaces are remarkably uniform. Variations in housing size suggest subtle differences in wealth or status, but the civilization appears to have prioritized urban cohesion over ostentatious displays of power. Civic planning, standardized construction, and coordinated trade indicate a system of governance capable of managing large urban populations, though the exact mechanisms, whether councils, guilds, or a network of local authorities, remain unknown. Religious and symbolic life permeated the material culture of the mature Harappan phase. Terracotta figurines, particularly of women and animals, suggest continued reverence for fertility and nature. Seals often depict bulls, elephants, tigers, and mythical creatures, possibly serving ritual or administrative purposes. While no monumental temples have been found, the uniformity of symbolic motifs across distant cities indicates a shared cultural or religious framework. Ritual artifacts, fire altars, and ceremonial spaces further underscore the importance of spiritual life in maintaining social cohesion and cultural continuity. Agricultural productivity supported the dense urban populations. Wheat, barley, lentils, and peas remained staple crops, cultivated using sophisticated irrigation methods and flood management techniques. Domesticated animals, cattle, goats, sheep, and buffalo provided labor, food, and secondary products such as milk and hides. Granaries in Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro suggest centralized storage and possible regulation of food supplies, ensuring that cities could withstand seasonal fluctuations or environmental challenges. This agricultural base underpinned trade, craft production, and urban growth, creating a self-sustaining cycle of prosperity. Population estimates for major cities during the peak phase range from tens of thousands to possibly over 40,000 inhabitants in urban centers like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Managing such populations required coordination of water supply, waste disposal, food distribution, and trade logistics. The evidence of standardized weights and measures, as well as uniform brick sizes and city layouts, reflects an advanced understanding of urban management and civic responsibility. The integration of technological innovation, social organization, and environmental adaptation allowed the Indus civilization to sustain urban life at a scale unmatched in the region for centuries. Trade was not merely local but extended to distant lands. Indus seals and goods have been found in Mesopotamian cities such as Ur, Lagash, and Kish, indicating reciprocal trade in raw materials, luxury items, and possibly knowledge or cultural practices. Items like carnelian beads, ivory, and metals were exported, while imports of silver, tin, and exotic stones facilitated metallurgy and craft specialization. Coastal settlements such as Lothal reveal sophisticated harbor engineering, suggesting maritime trade played a crucial role in economic expansion. The civilization's interconnected trade network provided stability, access to rare materials, and cultural exchange, fostering innovation across urban centers. Technological achievements during the mature phase were remarkable. Metallurgy produced durable tools and weapons. Craft production yielded consistent, high-quality artifacts, and urban infrastructure supported sanitation and public health on an unprecedented scale. Water reservoirs, wells, drainage systems, and granaries collectively illustrate a sophisticated understanding of engineering and civic planning. Such technological mastery, combined with social organization, allowed the civilization to thrive for several centuries without the large-scale fortifications or monumental displays of contemporaneous empires. Art and culture flourished alongside urban and technological achievements. Seals, pottery, figurines, and ornaments reflect an attention to detail, symbolic meaning, and aesthetic quality. Animal motifs dominate artistic expression, yet there are also abstract geometric patterns, suggesting both functional and cultural purposes. Craftsmen achieved standardization without sacrificing individuality, reflecting a society that valued both order and creativity. Clothing and textiles, inferred from spindle whorls, beads, and impressions, suggest that the Indus people cultivated both practical and symbolic forms of personal adornment. This period also demonstrates remarkable cultural continuity. Across cities separated by hundreds of kilometers, brick sizes, urban layouts, pottery styles, and seal motifs remain consistent. Such uniformity indicates robust communication networks, shared cultural norms, and an implicit standardization of knowledge and practice. The ability to maintain cohesion across a vast territory without centralized monarchies or overt displays of political authority is one of the most intriguing aspects of the mature Harappan civilization. By 1900 BCE, after centuries of prosperity, the Indus civilization had reached its zenith. Cities were densely populated, highly organized, and technologically sophisticated. Trade extended across the Arabian Sea and into Mesopotamia. Craftsmanship reached new heights. Agriculture sustained growing urban populations, and social organization balanced order with flexibility. The civilization demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for coordination, innovation, and adaptation, distinguishing it as one of the great urban societies of the ancient world. In this apex period, the Indus Valley Civilization was not only a hub of trade and technology, but also a cradle of cultural and societal experimentation. Its residents lived in homes with private baths and wells, conducted trade with distant lands, practiced symbolic and ritualized life, and coordinated complex urban systems. The civilization exemplified the potential of humans to create organized, sustainable urban centers that functioned without kings, monumental tombs, or militarized authority, a feat unparalleled in its time. The mature Indus civilization, therefore, stands as the defining era of the Harappan world. It is a testament to human ingenuity, planning, and cultural cohesion. This was the civilization that set benchmarks for urban design, trade, craft specialization, and social organization in South Asia, leaving behind a legacy that would influence subsequent cultures for millennia. From Harappa in the north to Dholavira in the west, and Lothal along the coast, the Indus people created a civilization that was both remarkably uniform and endlessly innovative, a civilization whose echoes still resonate in the archaeological record today. At the peak of the mature Indus Valley Civilization, roughly between 2500 and 1900 BCE, the cities along the Indus River and its tributaries had evolved into hubs of technological innovation, scientific observation, and cultural sophistication. Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, and Lothal were not merely centers of commerce or residence. They were laboratories of human standardization, and measurement were cornerstones of the civilization's scientific and technological prowess. Uniform brick sizes, approximately 7 hours 14 minutes and 28 seconds centimeters, were used across cities separated by hundreds of kilometers, suggesting strict conventions and coordinated craftsmanship. Stone weights, often cubical or spherical, were carefully calibrated to standardized units, facilitating trade and economic regulation. These weights have been discovered in both urban and peripheral sites, demonstrating that a common system of measurement was widely adopted across the civilization. This standardization enabled complex commerce, including long-distance trade with Mesopotamia, and ensured that urban management could operate efficiently even in the absence of a centralized political authority. Metallurgy thrived as both a practical and artistic pursuit. The Indus people mastered the working of copper, bronze, and gold, producing tools, weapons, jewelry, and ceremonial objects with precision. Bronze tools and implements, such as axes, chisels, and saws, reveal a sophisticated understanding of alloy composition and casting techniques. Gold and silver ornaments, including beads, bangles, and pendants, reflect both aesthetic sensibilities and the technical skill to manipulate precious metals. The crafting of these items was likely organized in workshops or specialized zones within cities, indicating advanced labor division and the development of artisanal guilds or collaborative networks. Craft production extended beyond metallurgy to include pottery, beadwork, textiles, and shell inlay. Wheel-thrown pottery featured geometric patterns, animal motifs, and sometimes symbolic markings, suggesting that functional and aesthetic considerations were intertwined. Beads made from carnelian, agate, and steatite were drilled, polished, and shaped with meticulous attention to uniformity, often strung into necklaces or incorporated into trade goods. Evidence of spindle whorls and loom weights suggests that weaving was an established practice, providing fabrics for clothing, trade, and ritual use. Shell inlay, ivory carving, and stone sculpture demonstrate not only technical mastery, but also the aesthetic sensibilities of a civilization attuned to beauty and symbolism. Seals and script form one of the most enigmatic aspects of Indus culture. Small steatite seals, often engraved with animals such as bulls, elephants, and unicorn-like creatures, bear inscriptions in the Indus script, which remains undeciphered to this day. While their exact purpose is unknown, seals likely functioned as administrative tools, identifying merchants, property, or goods. The widespread uniformity of seal motifs across cities suggests that these symbolic markers were part of a shared cultural and administrative system. These artifacts reflect both communication and control mechanisms, hinting at a society capable of complex economic, bureaucratic, and social coordination without the need for monumental hierarchies. Agricultural science also played a critical role in sustaining urban life. Crops such as wheat, barley, peas, and lentils were cultivated using irrigation and flood management techniques inherited from earlier settlements. Domesticated animals, cattle, goats, sheep, and buffalo were used for plowing, milk production, and food supply, allowing cities to support dense populations. Granaries at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro indicate centralized storage and careful management of food resources, reflecting an understanding of surplus storage, seasonal planning, and urban provisioning. Such agricultural sophistication ensured that urban populations could thrive despite the variability of river flows and seasonal climate fluctuations. Hydraulic engineering reached its zenith in some cities. Dholavira, in the arid region of present-day Gujarat, featured an intricate system of reservoirs, channels, and step tanks, designed to capture and conserve scarce rainfall. Lothal's dockyard demonstrates maritime planning that enabled trade and resource management along coastal waterways. These innovations reveal a detailed understanding of water behavior, storage, and distribution, essential for both urban sanitation and economic stability. The integration of environmental knowledge into urban design demonstrates that the Indus people were early masters of ecological engineering, blending technology with sustainability. Cultural and symbolic life was deeply intertwined with technology and daily existence. Figurines, often terracotta, depicted women, animals, and hybrid forms, likely reflecting fertility cults, spiritual beliefs, or social symbolism. Animal motifs, particularly bulls, elephants, and humped cattle, appeared in seals, pottery, and sculptures, serving both decorative and possibly ritual purposes. Fire altars and ceremonial objects indicate that religious or ritual practice was embedded in everyday life. The Indus people achieved a balance between functionality and cultural expression, demonstrating that technology and art were not separate domains, but mutually reinforcing aspects of civilization. Education and knowledge transfer were crucial for maintaining technological and cultural continuity. Skills in metallurgy, beadwork, pottery, weaving, and urban planning were likely taught through apprenticeship, family instruction, and communal practice. Knowledge of standardized measurements, brick production, water management, and agriculture required careful transmission across generations. The consistency of craft, construction, and trade across hundreds of kilometers underscores the effectiveness of these educational networks, allowing a complex urban society to function coherently across diverse regions. Trade, both local and long-distance, reinforced cultural and technological diffusion. Lothal's maritime connections facilitated exchange with distant regions, while inland cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro participated in extensive overland trade. Goods such as carnelian beads, semi-precious stones, metals, and crafted items circulated widely, creating economic interdependence between urban centers. This trade network also likely transmitted technological innovations, cultural motifs, and symbolic practices, further consolidating the civilization's cohesion. Science, technology, and culture were not isolated achievements. They were interdependent. Urban planning facilitated sanitation, which supported population growth, which enabled craft specialization, which sustained trade, which reinforced cultural cohesion. Religious and symbolic practices imbued daily life with meaning, guiding behavior and social norms. Knowledge transfer ensured continuity, while technological innovation allowed adaptation to environmental challenges. Together, these elements created a civilization capable of remarkable resilience, sophistication, and cultural expression without reliance on kings, monumental armies, or palaces. By the end of this period, the Indus Valley Civilization had established an urban standard that set it apart from contemporary societies. Its innovations in city planning, metallurgy, craft, agriculture, water management, trade, and symbolic expression reflect a holistic approach to civilization, one that integrated practical problem-solving with cultural sophistication. It was a society that demonstrated foresight, organization, and adaptability, capable of sustaining large populations while maintaining civic and environmental harmony. The legacy of this era is enduring. Standardized bricks, sophisticated seals, meticulously engineered water systems, and uniform craft traditions reflect an understanding of order, coordination, and sustainability that remains impressive even by modern standards. Artistic expression, ritual life, and symbolic communication reveal a civilization deeply attuned to meaning, social cohesion, and identity. The mature Indus Valley Civilization achieved a balance of practicality and culture, technology and spirituality, craft and community, a balance that would define its enduring influence on the subcontinent. The period between 2500 and 1900 BCE exemplifies the Indus civilization's scientific, technological, and cultural apex. It was a society capable of sustaining large, organized urban populations while simultaneously fostering trade, artistic expression, and ritual life. Its achievements demonstrate that complexity need not rely on kings, monumental structures, or military dominance. Rather, it can emerge from coordination, knowledge sharing, and a commitment to civic life. The science, technology, and culture of the mature Indus cities form the core of what makes this civilization one of the most remarkable in human history, leaving a legacy that continues to captivate scholars, archaeologists, and the global imagination. Around 1900 BCE, the remarkable trajectory of the Indus Valley Civilization began to change. After centuries of urban prosperity, technological sophistication, and cultural cohesion, the mature Harappan cities started showing signs of gradual decline. This was not a sudden collapse brought by invasion or catastrophic events, but rather a slow transformation, an unraveling of urban systems, trade networks, and societal cohesion that had once made cities like Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Dholavira, and Lothal models of human ingenuity. Over the course of the next 3 centuries, the Indus Valley agriculture, the backbone of the Indus economy, was particularly vulnerable. While the earlier mature Harappan period had relied on a combination of wheat, barley, pulses, and domesticated animals, declining river flows and potential soil degradation would have reduced crop yields. Granaries that once ensured surplus storage may have struggled to cope with environmental variability. This reduction in agricultural productivity would have had cascading effects. Smaller surpluses meant less trade, fewer raw materials for craft production, and diminished capacity to support urban populations. Urban centers that had thrived on centralized storage, specialized labor, and organized markets now faced increasing instability. Trade networks, both inland and maritime, also began to falter. Archaeological evidence shows a decline in long-distance exchange with Mesopotamia, Oman, and the Persian Gulf, as indicated by fewer Indus artifacts in those regions. Inland commerce, reliant on standardized weights, seals, and coordinated transport routes, suffered as urban centers shrank or were abandoned. Coastal ports, such as Lothal, may have faced difficulties maintaining maritime connections due to changes in riverine and coastal geomorphology. The collapse of trade reduced the availability of exotic materials like carnelian, semi-precious stones, tin, and metals, which have been critical for craft production and economic stability. Urban infrastructure, once a hallmark of Indus ingenuity, also began to deteriorate. Evidence suggests that public baths, drainage systems, and wells were neglected or fell into disrepair. Maintenance of streets, sewage systems, and water distribution became inconsistent, contributing to public health challenges and social disruption. Multi-storied homes and carefully planned blocks were abandoned or partially destroyed, leaving behind a patchwork of ruins that no longer supported dense populations. The sophistication that had characterized urban life was gradually replaced by simpler, less coordinated settlement patterns. Social cohesion, so critical to the success of the mature Harappan cities, faced challenges during this period. Without the steady flow of resources, trade, and agricultural surplus, urban populations were forced to relocate to smaller settlements, often nearer to more reliable water sources or agricultural lands. These settlements were less complex, with fewer specialized crafts and simpler housing structures. Evidence from post-urban sites shows continuity in craft traditions, such as bead making and pottery, but on a smaller scale and with reduced standardization. The intricate social fabric that had allowed coordinated governance, public infrastructure, and ritual practices began to fray under the pressures of environmental and economic stress. Archaeological evidence also points to shifts in material culture. Seals become less frequent, inscriptions in the Indus script are rare, and standardized weights decline in prevalence. While craft traditions persist, the precision, uniformity, and widespread distribution characteristic of the mature phase are diminished. This reflects a broader transformation in society. The decline of centralized or coordinated administrative practices, the reduction of large-scale commerce, and the fragmentation of urban life. Environmental and economic challenges were likely compounded by climatic fluctuations. Studies of paleoclimate data suggest that the Indian subcontinent experienced periods of reduced monsoon intensity between 1900 and 1700 BCE, leading to prolonged droughts in some regions. These climatic stressors would have affected agricultural yields, river flow, and water availability, placing further pressure on urban populations. Cities dependent on intensive irrigation or long-distance trade would have been particularly vulnerable, accelerating the abandonment of less sustainable urban centers. Despite these pressures, the decline of the Indus Valley was gradual rather than catastrophic. Evidence does not indicate widespread warfare or violent conquest as a primary cause of urban collapse. Instead, the civilization slowly transformed, with populations dispersing into smaller, decentralized villages. Craft traditions, trade practices, and cultural motifs continued in these settlements, albeit at a reduced scale. This suggests that the civilization's decline was a process of adaptation and transformation rather than abrupt destruction, allowing knowledge and skills to persist even as urban centers disappeared. The role of tectonic activity in the decline has also been considered. Earthquakes and river shifts could have altered the course of rivers, undermining irrigation, flood control, and water management systems. Dholavira's sophisticated reservoirs and Lothal's dockyard infrastructure, for example, required precise engineering to function effectively. Environmental disruption could have rendered these systems obsolete. Combined with declining rainfall and sedimentation in riverbeds, these natural factors may have created the conditions for the gradual abandonment of cities. As urban centers declined, regional differentiation increased. Some areas, such as Gujarat, continued to maintain smaller coastal settlements engaged in maritime trade. Others, along the Indus floodplain, transitioned to agrarian villages with limited craft production. The sprawling urban network fractured, giving way to a mosaic of smaller communities that carried forward the legacy of the Indus people in adapted forms. This fragmentation marked the shift from the urban-dominated mature Harappan phase to the more dispersed Late Harappan period, setting the stage for cultural transitions in South Asia over the next several centuries. Even as cities fell into disuse, the intellectual and cultural achievements of the Indus Valley did not vanish entirely. Knowledge of urban planning, standardized craft production, and long-distance trade persisted in dispersed communities. Religious and symbolic practices continued, reflected in terracotta figurines, pottery motifs, and ritual artifacts. These enduring elements reveal that while the cities may have declined, the core cultural and technological heritage of the Indus people continued to influence subsequent societies across South Asia. By 1600 BCE, the once great cities had largely been abandoned. Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and Dholavira were silent, their streets empty, baths dry, and granaries unused. Coastal ports like Lothal were no longer centers of commerce, and inland trade networks had largely dissipated. Yet, the civilization had left an indelible mark. Urban planning, standardized measurements, craft traditions, and symbolic systems that would echo in subsequent South Asian cultures. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization was not an end but a transformation, a dispersal of people, knowledge, and culture into new contexts that would seed future developments. The gradual collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization underscores the complex interplay of environmental change, economic pressures, technological limits, and societal adaptation. Unlike civilizations brought down by invasion or internal strife, the Indus cities faded as a consequence of multi-layered pressures: drought, shifting rivers, declining trade, and urban overextension combined with social adaptation, resulting in a slow dispersal rather than dramatic destruction. It is a story of resilience and transformation, reminding us that civilizations are dynamic systems, deeply dependent on their environment, economy, and social networks. In this period, the lessons of the Indus civilization become evident. The careful planning, engineering, and cultural cohesion that had sustained cities for centuries could not withstand persistent environmental and economic stress. Yet, the persistence of craft, agriculture, and symbolic practices in smaller settlements indicates that the human ingenuity and cultural knowledge of the Indus people endured. The collapse was not the disappearance of a people, but the reorganization of society in response to changing conditions, a transformation that would shape the course of South Asian history for centuries to come. The years between 1900 BCE and 1600 BC thus mark a turning point. The civilization that had thrived through planning, technology, and cultural cohesion entered a period of fragmentation and adaptation. Its cities fell silent, its trade networks diminished, but the enduring human legacy remained. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization is a testament to both the fragility and resilience of human societies, a reminder that even the most advanced civilizations are ultimately intertwined with the rhythms of their environment and the limits of their social and technological systems. By 1600 BCE, the great urban centers of the Indus Valley Civilization, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Dholavira, and Lothal, had largely been abandoned. The streets that once bustled with merchants, craftsmen, and residents lay silent, public baths dried, and granaries emptied. Yet, this was not the end of the people, knowledge, or cultural practices of the Indus civilization. Instead, it marked a period of transition where populations dispersed into smaller, less centralized settlements, carrying with them the accumulated skills, traditions, and innovations of the mature Harappan period. From 1600 to 1300 BCE, South Asia witnessed the Late Harappan phase, a time of cultural adaptation and transformation in response to environmental, economic, and societal pressures. The Late Harappan period is characterized by the craft production continued, albeit at a smaller scale and with regional variations. Bead making, pottery, metallurgy, and shell work persisted in these settlements, demonstrating that the artisans of the Indus Valley retained their skills even outside the context of large cities. Beads made from carnelian, agate, and semi-precious stones were still polished and drilled, while pottery remained wheel-thrown with characteristic geometric and animal motifs. Bronze tools and ornaments continued to be produced, though in smaller quantities, suggesting a localized rather than large-scale industrial production. The persistence of these crafts illustrates a cultural resilience, where the technological expertise of the mature Harappan period was adapted to the new realities of decentralized life. Agriculture remained the foundation of survival during this transition. Crops such as wheat, barley, lentils, and peas continued to be cultivated, alongside pulses and oilseeds adapted to regional climates. Domesticated animals, including cattle, buffalo, sheep, and goats, provided labor, dairy products, and meat. Evidence of irrigation channels, small reservoirs, and seasonal water management practices indicates that late Harappan communities maintained a sophisticated understanding of agriculture, albeit scaled to their smaller settlements. Granaries and storage pits were still in use, ensuring food security and the capacity to withstand seasonal fluctuations. These practices allowed dispersed communities to survive and thrive despite the absence of centralized urban infrastructure. Trade networks persisted, though they were more localized than during the mature Harappan phase. Archaeological findings indicate exchange between villages and regional centers, often involving raw materials, pottery, beads, and tools. Coastal trade appears to have continued in some areas, with smaller ports or landing sites facilitating commerce along the Arabian Sea. While the scale of long-distance trade with Mesopotamia or the Persian Gulf declined significantly, regional economic networks allowed for cultural exchange and resource distribution among dispersed communities. Standardized weights and measurement practices became less widespread, reflecting the diminished need for large-scale commercial coordination, yet localized trade retained elements of sophistication. Cultural and symbolic continuity was evident during the post-urban transition. Terracotta figurines, often representing women, animals, or mythological motifs, continued to be produced. These artifacts suggest that religious and ritual practices remained central to daily life, even in smaller, decentralized communities. Fire altars, ceremonial pottery, and symbolic markings on pottery and seals reflect continuity in ritual practice, linking late Harappan communities to their urban predecessors. The undeciphered Indus script, while increasingly rare, continued to appear in modified forms, suggesting a retained symbolic literacy and administrative knowledge at the local level. Cultural expression adapted to the new social realities, but the fundamental artistic and ritual traditions endured. Environmental adaptation was a defining feature of this transitional period. Many late Harappan settlements were established near perennial rivers or areas with stable water access, reflecting lessons learned from the decline of urban centers dependent on shifting rivers. Reservoirs, wells, and irrigation channels were used strategically to maximize agricultural output and maintain the domestic water supply. Communities also adapted to changing climates, cultivating drought-resistant crops, rotating fields, and managing livestock to mitigate environmental stress. These adaptations demonstrate a pragmatic application of ecological knowledge, ensuring survival in an era of environmental instability. Social organization shifted towards smaller, community-based governance structures. Without the centralized authority that had coordinated the planning of Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro, villages likely relied on local councils, elder assemblies, or cooperative management for dispute resolution, trade, and resource allocation. This localized governance allowed for flexibility, responsiveness to environmental challenges, and continuity of cultural practices. Evidence of communal structures, shared granaries, and coordinated water management indicates that collective action remained a critical feature of society, even in the absence of large urban institutions. The continuity of craft and technological knowledge was instrumental in maintaining cultural identity. Artisans carried skills across generations, ensuring the survival of techniques in pottery, metallurgy, beadmaking, and weaving. These crafts served practical purposes, provided means of trade, and reinforced social cohesion by sustaining shared cultural traditions. Localized production sites became centers of knowledge transmission, maintaining the technological sophistication developed during the mature Harappan period while adapting to smaller-scale social contexts. Symbolism and spiritual life remained integral to the late Harappan period. Fertility figurines, animal motifs, and ritual artifacts reflect continuity in religious and symbolic practices. While monumental temples were absent, sacred spaces persisted within homes, communal areas, or designated outdoor sites. These practices ensured that cultural memory, ethical frameworks, and social cohesion endured even as urban infrastructures collapsed. The persistence of symbolism highlights the resilience of identity and community values, demonstrating that culture can survive and adapt even when political and urban structures fail. By 1300 BCE, the dispersed communities of the late Harappan phase had laid the foundations for future South Asian cultures. Knowledge of urban planning, trade, craft, and ritual practice influenced emerging societies across the subcontinent. Smaller settlements facilitated experimentation with agricultural practices, craft specialization, and social organization, setting the stage for new cultural and technological developments in the subsequent Vedic period. While the grandeur of urban centers was lost, the intellectual and cultural legacy of the Indus civilization persisted, embedded in the practices, beliefs, and material culture of these post-urban communities. The post-urban transition illustrates the resilience and adaptability of the Indus people. Even after the collapse of centralized urban centers, dispersed settlements retained critical aspects of cultural, technological, and social knowledge. Craft production, agriculture, trade, ritual practice, and symbolic communication persisted in modified forms. Environmental adaptation, localized governance, and social cooperation allowed these communities to survive and evolve, ensuring that the innovations of the mature Harappan period were not entirely lost. This period also emphasizes the nonlinear nature of civilization. While cities fell, the people, knowledge, and cultural practices endured. The Indus Valley's legacy was not solely the monuments of Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro, but also the enduring skills, ideas, and adaptations carried forward by dispersed communities. From 1600 to 1300 BCE, the civilization transitioned from urban grandeur to decentralized resilience, a transformation that would shape South Asian society for centuries. The Late Harappan period stands as a testament to human adaptability, demonstrating that cultural and technological achievements can survive even when the grandeur of cities disappears. In essence, the post-urban transition of the Indus Valley Civilization represents continuity through transformation. Though the bustling streets of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro fell silent, the people, practices, and knowledge of the civilization endured. Smaller settlements maintained agricultural innovation, craft production, ritual practice, and social cohesion. Maritime and inland trade networks, though reduced, continued to connect communities. Cultural symbols, technological skills, and urban memory persisted, ensuring that the lessons, achievements, and legacy of the Indus Valley would influence subsequent civilizations long after the cities themselves vanished. As the cities of the Indus Valley Civilization fell silent, and the last Late Harappan settlements transitioned towards smaller, decentralized communities, the tangible and intangible legacies of this civilization began to resonate across the centuries. From 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE, the Indus people had crafted one of the world's first and most sophisticated urban civilizations, whose innovations in city planning, craft, trade, and social organization set a benchmark for societies that would follow. The civilization's historical significance lies not only in its material achievements, but also in the enduring influence it exerted on later South Asian cultures, the lessons it imparts about sustainability and adaptation, and the mysteries that continue to captivate scholars and the global imagination. The first, and perhaps most striking legacy, is urban planning and civil engineering. The careful layout of Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, and Lothal revealed a sophisticated understanding of urban. The civilization's craft and technological achievements were equally influential. Artisans in the Indus Valley produced highly refined pottery, metallurgy, beadwork, and textiles. The techniques, styles, and motifs developed during the mature Harappan period continued to influence local craft traditions during the Late Harappan phase and beyond. Bead-making techniques, bronze casting methods, and terracotta figurine styles persisted in regional settlements, forming a bridge between the urban sophistication of the mature Harappan cities and later cultural expressions. This continuity illustrates how technical knowledge can endure even in the absence of political centralization, ensuring that cultural and technological innovations are transmitted across generations. Religious, ritual, and symbolic practices formed another enduring component of the Indus legacy. Terracotta figurines, animal motifs, and ritual artifacts reflect a civilization attuned to spirituality, fertility, and cosmology. Fire altars and ceremonial objects suggest structured communal and ritual practices, linking individuals and communities across a broad geographic expanse. While no monumental temples or palaces have been found, these symbols indicate a shared set of beliefs and values that influenced subsequent religious and cultural systems in South Asia. The persistence of these practices highlights the resilience of culture beyond the lifespan of urban centers. The Indus script, though undeciphered, remains one of the civilization's most compelling legacies. Appearing on seals, pottery, and small artifacts, the script represents an early system of symbolic communication and record-keeping. Even if its meaning remains elusive, it demonstrates the civilization's capacity for abstract thought, administration, and communication. Scholars continue to study the script, hoping to unlock insights into governance, trade, and daily life. It's very enigmatic, underscoring the limits of historical knowledge while stimulating ongoing inquiry into human civilization and literacy. Water management and environmental adaptation form another enduring lesson. Reservoirs, wells, step tanks, and hydraulic channels exemplify an advanced understanding of water conservation and management in diverse climatic conditions. In Dholavira, the meticulous design of reservoirs reflects sophisticated engineering that accounted for seasonal fluctuations and arid conditions. Lothal's dockyard and harbor constructions reveal knowledge of tides, currents, and maritime logistics. These innovations demonstrate that human ingenuity can harmonize with environmental constraints, offering lessons on sustainability and resilience relevant to modern societies. The social organization of the Indus Valley Civilization also contributes to its historical significance. Despite the absence of monumental palaces, temples, or clear evidence of kingship, the civilization maintained cohesive urban networks, complex trade systems, and standardized infrastructure. Governance appears to have relied on local councils, cooperative organizations, and consensus-based administration. This suggests that complex social coordination and urban sophistication can arise without centralized authoritarian rule, a concept that challenges conventional narratives of ancient civilization and underscores the diversity of political models in human history. Cultural continuity and adaptation are evident in the transition from the mature Harappan phase to the Late Harappan period. Even as cities declined, smaller settlements preserved agricultural knowledge, craft techniques, trade practices, and ritual traditions. This diffusion ensured that the intellectual and technological capital of the Indus civilization influenced subsequent societies, including the early Vedic communities. Harappan influenced regional cultures and later urban centers across the subcontinent. The civilization's capacity to transmit knowledge through dispersion highlights its long-term impact on regional development, underscoring that collapse does not equate to cultural extinction. The global historical significance of the Indus Valley Civilization is equally profound. As one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, contemporaneous with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Nile Valley, the Indus civilization demonstrates that complex societies arose independently across multiple regions. Its achievements in urban planning, sanitation, standardized craft production, trade, and symbolic communication contribute to our understanding of the diversity of early human ingenuity. Comparisons with other ancient civilizations reveal both unique innovations, such as grid-based city planning and integrated drainage systems, and shared patterns of urban development, providing insight into the broader trajectory of human civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization also challenges modern assumptions about the determinants of societal complexity. Without monumental architecture, visible political hierarchies, or military dominance, it achieved urban sophistication, economic integration, and cultural cohesion. This raises important questions about governance, social organization, and sustainability in early civilizations, offering valuable perspectives for historians, archaeologists, and scholars of human society. The civilization's focus on functionality, hygiene, trade, and craft, rather than spectacle and monumentalism, provides an alternative model for understanding urban success in the ancient world. Finally, the mystery and allure of the Indus Valley Civilization contribute to its enduring legacy. The undeciphered script, the sudden decline of urban centers, and the disappearance of monumental rulers leave unanswered questions about governance, society, and culture. Yet this very uncertainty sparks curiosity and scholarship, inspiring generations of archaeologists, historians, and enthusiasts to explore South Asia's ancient past. In capturing both human ingenuity and the limits of historical knowledge, The Indus Valley Civilization continues to hold a unique place in the global imagination. From 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization achieved remarkable heights in urban planning, technology, trade, craft, cultural expression, and environmental adaptation, while leaving enduring lessons in social organization, resilience, and knowledge transmission. Its cities, though abandoned, represent a blueprint for sustainable urban living. Its crafts, technologies, and rituals reflect both practical mastery and aesthetic sensibility. Its script and symbols continue to challenge our understanding of early literacy and administration. The civilization's decline and subsequent transformation into smaller settlements demonstrate adaptability and continuity, ensuring that its intellectual and cultural heritage persisted across South Asia for centuries. In sum, the Indus Valley Civilization stands as a testament to human ingenuity, adaptability, and cultural resilience. Its legacy is found not only in archaeological ruins, but also in the enduring principles of urban design, craft, trade, and societal organization that influenced future generations. As we look back across nearly 2 millennia from the earliest settlements around 3300 BCE to the post-urban communities of 1300 BC, we see a civilization that thrived, innovated, adapted, and transformed, leaving a story of urban brilliance and cultural sophistication that continues to inspire and challenge the modern world. The Indus Valley Civilization reminds us that civilizations are both fragile and resilient. Cities may fall, trade networks may collapse, and urban populations may disperse, but knowledge, culture, and ingenuity endure. Its lessons in environmental adaptation, urban planning, technological skill, and social cohesion resonate not only within the historical context of South Asia, but across the broader human narrative. The civilization's story, from its rise to its gradual decline and post-urban transformation, stands as a profound reflection on the capacities of human societies to innovate, adapt, and leave enduring legacies long after the dust of cities has settled.